how a whirlwind romance became a franchise, and how reality TV rewrote reality itself. When Chantel Everett first landed in Santo Domingo, she wasn't looking for fame. She wanted to learn Spanish before starting her nursing career in Atlanta. What she didn't expect was Pedro Jimeno, a young man with warm eyes, a quick laugh, and the kind of confidence that immediately puts people at ease. Their first dinner stretched into hours, long after the restaurant's tables had been cleared. By the end of that week, they were inseparable. Back then, the only audience was a handful of curious relatives, and the occasional passerby who noticed two people from very different worlds, talking like they'd known each other forever. Within months, that private story would become a television property, and both of their lives would change forever. By 2015, TLC's 90 Day Fiancé had turned ordinary international couples into viral sensations. Producers were always scanning online visa forums and social media communities for pairs whose stories could hook an audience. When Chantel mentioned her long-distance relationship to a friend who happened to know a field producer, the connection was made almost instantly. To the network, the ingredients were irresistible. A Southern American woman from a tight-knit family, a charming Dominican fiancé from a modest background, and a ticking 90-day clock before marriage. Within days of signing release forms, their courtship became content. TLC's producers understood storytelling better than most Hollywood writers. They knew when to linger on an awkward silence, when to amplify a nervous laugh, and when to frame an argument as a cliffhanger. For Chantel and Pedro, the cameras were flattering at first. They captured the glow of new love, the airport hugs, the inside jokes, the sweet chaos of introducing families over FaceTime. But behind every love story, producers also needed conflict. And for that, both families were gold. When 90 Day Fiancé viewers met the Everetts, it was clear that Chantel's parents, Thomas and Karen, were skeptical. "We just want to make sure this isn't about a visa," Karen told producers, her words destined to be repeated across countless fan pages. The line set the tone for what became one of TLC's highest-rated arcs: suspicion, loyalty, and cultural misunderstanding wrapped in wedding decor. Pedro's mother, Lydia, and sister, Nicole, filmed from the Dominican Republic, bristled at what they saw as arrogance. The friction wasn't invented, but editing sharpened it. Every raised eyebrow became a reaction shot. Every phone call became a scene. As ratings climbed, the network moved quickly. In 2019, The Family Chantel premiered, the first 90 Day Fiancé spin-off, dedicated entirely to a single couple. For TLC, it was a business decision. For Chantel and Pedro, it was a microscope. Reality TV isn't filmed in real time. Crews would arrive at the couple's Atlanta home in the morning, set up lighting rigs, and capture daily life that had been loosely scripted the night before. Producers would prompt conversations. "Can you talk about what happened with your mom yesterday?" Then step back while cameras rolled. At first, Chantel loved the energy. She'd always been articulate, confident, and camera-ready. Pedro, though shy at first, grew into the role. He joked with crew members and learned to deliver perfect sound bites. But the more hours of footage they produced, the more their private life blurred with performance. Friends stopped visiting. Every argument risked becoming tomorrow's B-roll. When production paused, the silence felt strange, like the world had gone off air. Crew members have since admitted that the pressure of constant filming often hardened natural disagreements into dramatic set pieces. On-field producer, who spoke anonymously after the divorce, said, "They weren't acting, but they were definitely aware they were being watched. Once that awareness sets in, every argument feels like a scene." In the editing suites in Los Angeles, story editors pieced together hundreds of hours into tidy, 40-minute episodes. Their job wasn't accuracy, it was narrative rhythm. Scenes were rearranged to build tension. Voice-over lines were written after the fact. One season famously opened with a tearful Chantel saying, "I don't know if I can trust him anymore." In real life, that line had been about a missing document at the immigration office, not infidelity, but in context. It teased a brewing marital crisis, and viewers couldn't look away. The show's ratings spiked, and Chantel's social media following exploded. Sponsorship offers arrived, skincare lines, clothing partnerships, podcast invitations. Pedro, meanwhile, began studying real estate, encouraged by producers who thought a career pivot would make a compelling subplot. Their success had a cost. Every personal milestone, buying a house, visiting Pedro's family, was packaged into content. When they celebrated anniversaries, there was always a boom mic hovering just out of frame. Psychologists who study reality television call it the exposure paradox. Fame promises validation, but it also alters the relationship it celebrates. Chantel and Pedro were bound by two contracts: their marriage certificate and their TLC deal. The second often dictated the first. TLC's scheduling required that dramatic storylines align with seasonal premieres. That meant arguments couldn't simply resolve. They had to build toward a mid-season cliffhanger. Production calendars overrode emotional recovery. If the couple reconciled too early, the editors lost tension. Pedro once joked on camera, "It's like our love has commercial breaks." The line was funny then. In hindsight, it feels prophetic. By the end of their third televised year, both looked tired. Their interactions, once playful, had grown clipped. Fans debated online whether the marriage was genuine or for the show. The truth, as always, was more complicated. Yes, they loved each other, but they were also protecting storylines, sponsors, and income streams. Reality fame doesn't come with health benefits. Longevity depends on keeping the audience emotionally invested. Both families understood their roles. Karen Everett leaned into the protective mother persona, while Pedro's sister Nicole became the unapologetic antagonist. In interviews, they later admitted that producers encourage bold statements because it makes good TV. Behind closed doors, those comments stung. Chantel once told friends she dreaded watching new episodes because she didn't know which version of her life had made the final cut. Pedro, meanwhile, felt cornered by public criticism from Chantel's relatives, much of it fueled by selective editing. The tension seeped into everything. When the cameras stopped, the silence between them wasn't relief, it was fatigue. By 2020, the family Chantel was pulling strong numbers, and TLC extended its run. But inside their Atlanta home, things were shifting. Pedro's new career in real estate meant long hours away. Chantel worked hospital shifts through the pandemic, often exhausted. Filming resumed under COVID restrictions, with crew members masked and distanced. The pandemic made their isolation worse. Friends described a couple living parallel lives under one roof, co-workers more than partners. Still, their on-screen chemistry remained magnetic. Fans saw snippets of laughter and affection carefully placed between heavier scenes. Editors called it emotional contrast. To the audience, it looked like resilience. To Chantel and Pedro, it was survival. Every reality TV couple eventually hits the same wall. The point where private pain outweighs public reward. For Chantel and Pedro, that moment came quietly. After a long day of filming a family dinner that ended in another argument, they sat in the dark of their living room. No cameras, no producers, just two people wondering how much of their marriage was still real. It wasn't one fight or one betrayal. It was erosion. Each retake, each staged conversation chipped away at trust. Pedro's family accused TLC of twisting narratives to make him look opportunistic. Chantel's family said the show exploited cultural stereotypes. Both were right. By the time season 4 entered post-production, the couple was emotionally done, but contracts required appearances, confessionals, and promotional interviews. They smiled on cue, told light-hearted stories, and avoided questions about the future. Privately, they were already living apart. When the family Chantel premiered its 2022 season, viewers saw a new Pedro, colder, distant, focused on work. Chantel appeared anxious, defensive, still hoping to mend things. Fans sensed what producers already knew. The fairy tale had turned tragic. Behind the scenes, TLC executives debated whether to keep filming after rumors of separation surfaced. Ultimately, the story was too big to abandon. The end of a marriage is still part of the story. One producer reportedly said, "Viewers deserve closure." That decision blurred the final line between entertainment and exploitation. Cameras followed as they navigated property disputes, therapy sessions, and emotional breakdowns. The footage was gripping and heartbreaking. When two families became the show, and the line between culture and storyline vanished. When TLC greenlit The Family Chantel in 2019, it wasn't just a spin-off, it was an experiment. Could a reality TV network sustain a full series on the gravitational pull of two families who could barely sit at the same dinner table? The answer, as executives quickly learned, was yes. Spectacularly yes. To viewers, the Everetts were the polished, middle-class Atlanta family, with strong opinions and stronger boundaries. The Jimenos, filmed largely in the Dominican Republic, were lively, direct, and fiercely loyal to their own. The cultural friction made for perfect television. Production notes from those early seasons showed just how carefully each interaction was staged. Crews would arrive at Chantel's parents' house hours before filming to wire the kitchen with mics. The family knew the beats. Karen would ask pointed questions. Thomas would look concerned. Chantel would defend Pedro. And somewhere in that rhythm, the show would find its spark. It wasn't scripted, but it was orchestrated. As one story producer later put it, "You don't tell people what to say. You just put them in the same room and ask the right question." Religion was another unspoken tension. Chantel's family grounded themselves in Christian values. Pedro's family leaned on spiritual traditions and community networks back home. When Chantel's mother prayed for strength to protect her daughter, producers caught it on tape and used it as a motif through the season. For Pedro's mother Lydia, that scene came across as judgment. "They make us look like we are not believers, like we don't have morals," she said in a 2020 interview for a Dominican news outlet. The cultural divide wasn't just between two households. It became a symbol of North-South misunderstandings. American viewers debated on social media whether Chantel's family was protective or prejudiced, whether Pedro's relatives were loving or opportunistic. TLC had achieved the holy grail of reality television, a conversation that extended beyond the screen. By the second season, both families understood the rhythm of production. Interviews, known internally as confessionals, were filmed months later, with producers guiding participants through leading questions. When you saw Pedro's mom say that, what went through your mind? How did you feel when Karen accused you of lying? These sound bites were emotional currency. The more raw the response, the better the episode. Chantel later admitted that the interviews became a kind of therapy she didn't consent to. You say things you'd never say in person because you're sitting in a chair, talking to a camera. Then you see it later, and it feels like a betrayal of your own privacy. Pedro, for his part, felt the pressure to defend his family on camera, even when he privately agreed with Chantel. "You get trapped between truth and TV," he said in one reunion special. "You don't know which one people will believe." Karen Everett emerged as a fan favorite and lightning rod. She leaned into her protective mother persona, delivering quotable lines like "I have eyes everywhere" and "No one plays my daughter." TLC turned those moments into memes, promos, and even t-shirts. On the other side, Nicole Jimeno evolved from younger sister to full-fledged antagonist, outspoken, glamorous, and always ready to challenge Chantel. She gave the series a necessary edge, the spark that producers called controlled chaos. The families understood their roles, but what they couldn't predict was how audiences would personalize the conflict. Social media fandom became tribal. Viewers picked sides, flooded comments with insults, and turned family arguments into moral battles. Chantel once described scrolling through Instagram after an episode and seeing strangers dissecting her parents' marriage. "It felt like people were living in our house," she said. "They knew every argument, every word." Producers constantly asked for authentic moments, a phrase that became both a mantra and a trap. Authenticity sells, but it also exposes. When Chantel broke down crying during a 2021 dinner scene, fans praised her vulnerability. Few knew that the moment followed 12 hours of filming and an off-camera argument about fatigue. "The cameras caught the tears," said a crew member, "but not the exhaustion that caused them." Pedro's family faced their own fatigue. Flying crews to the Dominican Republic meant long filming days under sweltering heat, often repeating the same conversation in different locations for coverage. Nicole later admitted that she felt used, but also grateful, aware that visibility brought opportunities but cost privacy. Every episode blurred cultural nuance into story beats, money transfers, family expectations, career aspirations. Pedro's habit of sending remittances home, common in Caribbean families, became a point of controversy in U.S. media coverage. Chantel's parents saw it as proof of divided loyalty. The debate wasn't unique to them. It echoed a larger narrative about immigrant families and sacrifice. Yet, on television, it played as betrayal. TLC didn't invent those dynamics, but editing amplified them until they defined the couple's identity. Cultural experts later noted how the show simplified complex realities into digestible drama. "It's not just entertainment," one sociologist told Atlanta magazine. It's shaping how Americans perceive cross-cultural relationships. By 2022, faith had returned as a quiet subplot. Chantel attended church more regularly. Pedro sought counseling from mentors in his community. Producers filmed these moments sparingly. They lacked the explosive energy of family showdowns. But they hinted at too. People trying to rediscover stability beyond television. In one unaired clip described by a crew member, Chantel lights a candle in her church and whispers, "Let them see the real us, not the TV us." The line never made it into the final cut. It was too introspective, too still. But it may have been the truest thing she said all season. As filming continued, the relationship between production and family members began to fracture. Karen demanded more control over her portrayal, requesting approval rights that TLC declined. Nicole briefly threatened to quit after a storyline suggested she was manipulating Pedro. What had started as a family reality show had become a negotiation between personal dignity and network demands. TLC executives, chasing consistent ratings, pushed for more high-stakes moments. The Everetts, once enthusiastic participants, grew wary. The camera used to feel like a friend, Chantel later reflected. Now it felt like an intruder. How performance replaced conversation, and a marriage became a storyline. When the family Chantel entered its third year, the couple who once embodied cross-cultural love now carried the weight of a franchise. Their faces sold reruns, their arguments filled network schedules, and their exhaustion fueled internet commentary. Privately, both knew the dynamic had changed. The show was no longer about them. It was them. By 2021, filming followed a fixed rhythm. Crew vans would arrive at 7 a.m. The couple would review a rough outline of the day's scenes. Producers called it story flow, not scripting. But the effect was similar. "Let's pick up from where you two left off yesterday," a producer would say, echoing an argument that might have cooled days ago. It was television's oldest trick, reheating conflict for continuity. Chantel, trained in calm bedside manner from her nursing work, struggled to reignite emotion she had already processed. Pedro, by contrast, found it easier to switch on frustration. "I learned to act," he said later, "but not the good kind." The repetition dulled authenticity. Real life became footage inventory. By afternoon, they'd film the same conversation from 3 camera angles, their words flattening into dialogue. In post-production, those hours were compressed into 5-minute scenes that looked spontaneous. Editors stitched together outbursts and reactions that sometimes occurred days apart. Chantel once confronted producers after watching an episode where her calm response was replaced by a clip from another argument. "You changed the meaning," she told them. They shrugged. It was pacing, they said. Pedro stopped watching entirely. "You start doubting your memory," he explained to a friend. "You see a version of yourself you don't recognize." The emotional dissonance was profound. They were performing authenticity for millions, while losing it privately. Reality TV fame is isolating. Friends become cautious. Relatives filter every conversation for potential storylines. The Everett's neighbors learned to avoid camera trucks. Pedro's colleagues at his real estate office teased him about his TV marriage. Meanwhile, social media became both mirror and magnifier. Each episode generated thousands of comments dissecting body language, tone, even word choice. Fans tagged Chantel in speculation threads about Pedro's loyalty. Strangers DM'd Pedro, warnings about the green card trap, unaware that he already held permanent residency. Fame gave them influence, but stole anonymity. Ordinary errands turned into public judgment. "You're the girl from 90 Day," one cashier said. "The one whose mom doesn't like her husband." Chantel smiled politely. But the label stung. It erased everything else she was. Pedro's transition into real estate. A storyline that began as a light subplot became symbolic of their drift. Long hours at open houses kept him away from filming and from home. Chantel interpreted his absences as emotional distance. Pedro saw her suspicion as proof she never believed in him.